Everyone's all right?
Yes.
Is anyone else home with you?
Just the babies and my boyfriend. Well, we came from Britain. It's better over there because we don't have no complaints at all.
Yeah.
12-year-old Jacqueline Mimi Torres-García vanished, and apparently no one noticed for over a year until her remains were found in a plastic bin behind an abandoned home. Now, Connecticut's Office of the Child Advocate is investigating how so many alleged red flags were missed, including shocking apparent lapses by the state's child welfare agency, like a video call where apparently another child pretended to be Mimi after she was already gone. We're going to break down the latest developments and what they could mean for this case with a former prosecutor and deputy attorney general. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. Real quick, not to take away from this story in any way, but I just want to let you guys know about something. So, can we be real for a second? Credit card debt, this is a problem. This is a problem that affects a lot of people, and it's not an accident, okay? Every call, every fee, every high interest trap, it's all a system designed to keep real Americans like you and me stuck, okay? The banks profit, creditors win, real families lose. But today's sponsor, PDS Debt, they are helping people fight back. So whether it's credit cards, personal loans, medical bills, PDS Debt has customized options just for you. They will understand your specific situation and build a plan to help you pay off debt faster. And there's no minimum credit score that's required. Plus, they are A+ rated by the Better Business Bureau with thousands of 5-star reviews. Look, everybody knows what it's like to drown financially, which is why I want you to find all the solutions to your debt. It's your money, it's your future. Don't let the system decide for you. You are 30 seconds away from being debt-free. Get your free assessment. Find the best option for you right now at pdsdebt.com/sidebar. That's pdsdebt.com/sidebar. pdsdebt.com/sidebar. Okay, so we're back to this heartbreaking case out of New Britain, Connecticut. This is where 12-year-old Jacqueline Mimi Torres-García was found inside of a plastic storage bin behind an abandoned home with a major update right now. The state's child welfare agency is now facing tough questions, maybe unsurprisingly, after releasing new details that show, or apparently show, DCF had contact with Mimi's family for more than a decade. Caseworkers even apparently held a video call in January with someone they believed was this little girl. This is months after investigators say she was already dead. So now Connecticut's Office of the Child Advocate has launched a sweeping investigation into how so many apparent red flags were missed. This all happening while one of the key suspects, her mother's former boyfriend, appeared back in court on new charges that are tied to Mimi's death. So we're going to break down what this new investigation means, what DCF is saying now about the agency's last contact with a child that they insisted, or seemingly insisted, they thought was safe. Because the question that we always ask in these kinds of child abuse cases is, could this realistically have been prevented? Now, if you're just catching up, this case out of Connecticut is one that has haunted everybody who has heard it. It started as a mystery that no one even knew existed because 12-year-old Mimi, she wasn't reported missing. She didn't vanish from a playground or a park. She just disappeared quietly inside of her own home. Police say her mother, Carla Garcia, withdrew her from school in August of 2024, telling staff that Mimi would be homeschooled. After that, no one outside that home reportedly ever saw her alive again. And then months later, on October 8th, an anonymous call about suspicious activity behind an abandoned home in New Britain led officers to a plastic storage bin that was sealed shut with trash bags and sheets. And inside were the remains of this little girl who had been missing. She weighed just 26 pounds. That little girl, Jacqueline Mimi Torres-García. Investigators now say that she'd likely been dead since the fall of 2024. Her body first hidden in the basement of the family's Farmington apartment and then later moved as the adults in her life tried to start over somewhere new. Her mother, Carla, her mother's boyfriend, Jonathan and Anita, and her mother's sister, so the aunt here, Jacqueline Garcia, they were all arrested. They were all charged in connection with Mimi's death. And what police uncovered next only deepened the horror. Because according to unsealed warrants, Mimi was allegedly zip-tied as punishment, forced to stand for hours, and denied food until her body gave out. After she died, according to the warrants, the smell of decomposition became unbearable. So the adults allegedly began sleeping in hotels before moving the little girl's body to New Britain, packed inside of that bin. But even as all of this was apparently happening, neighbors say they were hearing things, banging, screaming, arguing. So police were called more than once to check on the family. And one of those visits, caught on body cam video from December 29th, 2024, it now plays like something out of a nightmare, and we are going to see it. Because officers, they're calm, they're polite, they're chatting with Carla and Jonathan about a noise complaint, even wishing them Merry Christmas before leaving. Take a listen.
Hello. Hi, how are you?
Good.
Is everything okay?
Yeah.
We got a call. There's a lot of noise coming from your apartment.
They're always called.
Okay.
Everything's good though.
Everyone's all right?
Yes.
Is anyone else home with you?
Just the babies and my boyfriend.
Okay. Is your boyfriend here?
Yeah.
Can I speak with him?
Yeah. Babe! Babe! They just want to make sure everything's okay.
You okay?
Yeah, I'm just pregnant. Just
Okay.
moods, you know.
All right.
But that's really it.
Hello?
He's coming up.
Oh, okay. Mind if I come in some while the heat up?
Huh?
You mind if I come in some while the heat up? Hey, how's it going? Good. We just got a call. There's a lot of noises and stuff like that. Everyone's okay?
Yeah, it's, my wife's pregnant, so she just be having mood swings. And
Okay.
I be trying to calm her down.
Okay. Things happen.
I'm at the end, so
Okay.
it's difficult.
All right. Well, I haven't met you guys real quick. I'm just going to write your names down, say I spoke with you, and get out of here, okay?
Okay.
Hi. How long you guys been staying here?
Almost a year.
Yeah.
Okay. Things are good.
Yeah.
Sometimes the walls are, you live in apartments, walls are
Yeah, we
thin
always hear
sometimes.
complaints.
Yeah.
They've been complaining since we first moved here, so
Okay, so it's not the
We're
first.
planning on moving.
Okay.
we're actually moving.
Oh, for real?
Yeah, because of that. Better. Well, we came from New Britain. It's better over there because we don't
Right.
have no complaints at all.
Yeah, it's a little bit different area. People are a little less likely to want to call for some noise and stuff like that.
Police had no idea that this little girl who used to live there was apparently already dead. According to arrest warrants, when confronted by detectives nearly a year later, Garcia's story kept changing. First blaming Jonathan and Anita for throwing Mimi down the stairs, then later admitting she helped zip tie her own daughter and withheld food because she said she didn't listen. Anita reportedly told police he was just helping Garcia get rid of a bin. Police say Garcia's sister, Jacqueline, admitted to taking the photos of Mimi restrained on the floor, watching as her niece was abused and starved. And now, as these criminal cases move forward, state officials are launching their own investigation into how this could have ever happened. To help me break all this down, I want to bring on special guest, former Deputy Attorney General, Prosecutor Mark Weaver. Mark, thank you so much for taking the time. It's really good to see you. From your perspective, we were just talking about it before we went on air. I mean, when you hear a case like this, when you hear how long it took before anyone realized that Mimi was missing, that something happened, what stands out to you legally? What stands out to you on a human level? Talk to me about it.
This is a maddening case. Everyone failed this child. Her parents, her aunt, her mother's boyfriend. In some small measure, the police, although they could not have known the evil that was going on when they visited this house. And the child welfare authorities, who are supposed to be experts at finding out whether a child is being abused or is in danger. And so we're going to see not just this criminal case, but we're going to see a significant civil case against the agencies responsible for protecting this child. It's one of the worst cases I've seen in a very long time.
From a prosecutor's standpoint, what are the biggest red flags that should have prompted more immediate action here?
Well, if prosecutors are responsible for bringing charges against the three main defendants in this case, civil lawyers will sue the Children's Services Agency and seek justice from there. But for the prosecutors, and let's be clear, I want to make sure everyone recognizes the people who starved this child to death are the ones most responsible and deserve the most scrutiny. Having said that, we can also find where the holes in the safety net were and resolve those so future children won't be ignored or won't be subject to what appears to be very lax regulation of their safety.
You raise an interesting point. From a criminal point of view, could a defense attorney use that and say, hey, if professionals out there didn't step in, they didn't see anything wrong. There was no prolonged abuse. If there was really going on, as what the prosecution says, somebody would have stopped it. I mean, have you heard a defense like that before? Because the counterargument would be like, no, you deliberately shielded what was going on.
Defense lawyers will tell you, I've never been a defense lawyer, I always work as a prosecutor, but defense lawyers will tell you that they can make any argument legally and ethically appropriate to try to have their clients either acquitted or have charges dismissed. And so I would not be surprised if this went to a jury trial, if one of the defense lawyers were to make that case. What's much more likely here, and what's probably happening in the background, is the prosecutors are working to flip one defendant, one or more defendant, against each other to get somebody to come forward and testify about things that are not clear about who did what, when, where, and how.
Yeah, no, that's important because we might not have those answers. I mean, there might not be the forensic proof to determine who did what and how, surveillance footage, maybe even cell phone evidence to determine that. So if you have a cooperating witness when multiple people are involved or accused of being complicit in what happened to a child, we do see that a lot of times. I just want to go back to one thing before we get into the update of this investigation, and it's an important update. Generally speaking, if we're talking about here multiple warnings and calls that were made, right? That's the allegation, including police visits. From your experience, what does that say about the communication between law enforcement and Child Protective Services?
Well, we know from 2020 hindsight that they missed a very big problem. But if they're ever sued, they have to be judged based on what they knew at the time. Let's also remember, and I'm a supporter of this, government actors have immunity from lawsuit. It's not complete, but there is a more difficult case to be brought when someone is suing government, largely because if that didn't exist, there'd be many more lawsuits against government, which would bankrupt these agencies and not allow them to do the important work they do. I'm also not suggesting that any of the people in this agency were bad people who wanted a child to be hurt. What's much more likely here is they have too many children to supervise, not enough time to do it. And they didn't take the extra steps, particularly in that Zoom interview where they held up a different child and said, this is her, she's fine. Little things like that, those shortcuts probably should not have been taken.
I want to go back to this update. Okay, so the Office of the Child Advocate confirmed to NBC Connecticut that it is conducting an in-depth review into the death of Mimi, okay, focusing on what contact state agencies had with her family before she died. You have acting child advocate Christina Guillo, who says that her team will be examining the family's full history with the Department of Children and Families, the school system, the courts, to understand whether there were in fact missed opportunities to protect Mimi. In a statement, Guillo said, quote, "As with all our in-depth investigations, our investigation will include a comprehensive review of the family's involvement with state agencies or state-funded services, including the Department of Children and Families, schools, and the court system. Our investigations have two purposes: accountability and prevention. First, we determine what services were provided to the children and family, whether state laws and agency policies were followed, and whether there were missed opportunities to ensure the safety and well-being of the children involved. The second purpose is to understand whether there are any changes in law or policy that will help prevent future tragedies. When our investigation is complete, if we determine there are actions that should be taken to ensure accountability or to improve how the state services children, we will publish a report with our findings and recommendations." Mark, when you hear that from the Office of the Child Advocate, in your experience, is that what comes from that? Is this common? How big a deal is this? What is the real significance of this step?
When I was the Deputy Attorney General of Ohio, we were the law firm for all state government. And so I've come alongside of state agencies in situations like this. And I'm sure your viewers share my concern that it feels like there's a whole lot of attention after we know this bad thing happened than there was before. And that's frustrating. Having said that, there should be a review. We do need to resolve this for future cases. But the media attention and the fine coverage that you and Law&Crime are doing on this is turning up the heat on these public agencies and forcing them to move in a much quicker way than they would have if there hadn't have been public outrage. It's always a shame that it takes a horrific crime like this to spur into action agencies that otherwise move at a glacial pace.
But realistically, what can they practically do if they're how do they hold someone accountable? How can they really, be an advocate for a change in the law?
So there's more specific changes that can be made. Who were the case workers? Who were their supervisors? Did they do their job? Those people, if they didn't do their job or follow policy, will need to be punished, disciplined, fired, sued. That's what the specific individuals involved in this case. But, for example, is it a good idea to do Zoom check-ins? That's certainly very efficient. We all use Zoom. It's very easy to use. Is that a good idea? That policy may have to be reviewed. And are there other ways that we can get either funding or better policies to this agency so children's services workers can be more on top of the risk factors for a child? Believe it or not, AI can help in this regard. I'm aware of a nonprofit called Prevention Now out there that is using AI to figure out patterns of who's at risk of human trafficking. This case is not about human trafficking, but AI could figure out what circumstances in a case are more likely to have abuse like this and allow workers to spend more time focusing on those calls than those that computer algorithms have decided are less likely to be putting a child in danger.
That's actually fascinating. I do wonder from a human point of view, and I'm not making an accusation here, I'm not making a wide assumption, but have you seen in the past issues with training where you have workers who maybe are just checking the box, right? I went there, I said this, or I did a Zoom call, but they don't take that extra step or they don't look beyond the weeds. Maybe it's not possible, maybe it's not, right? Maybe there are things that are being deliberately withheld from them, but do you see that there needs to be advancements in training?
Sure, somebody who started in this profession 20 years ago may not be as up to speed on the latest signs of abuse that someone who just learned it in school might. And so everybody could use more training. And you make a good point. The training has to be applicable to the modern situation. And it's got to be one where people can have their skills tested, right? And so perhaps after a training, a test is administered to everybody in the training to see if they understood the concepts in that training. That would make people spend a lot more time listening to the material and a lot less time playing on their phone, waiting for the clock to run out.
I'll also tell you, look, this review that they're doing is going to be a lot to unpack because DCF has already released its own version of the timeline on Facebook outlining years of involvement with Mimi's family. According to the agency, their first contact dates back to when Jacqueline was born in 2013 because her mother, Torres-García, was in a detention center. She was placed with relatives. That guardianship lasted until 2022. After that, DCF says Garcia and Mimi's father regained custody with the department's support. DCF claims that the last time caseworkers actually saw Mimi was September of 2022 and that she and her siblings appeared, quote, safe. And DCF then closed its case that November. You fast forward to January 2025, the agency says it reopened an investigation over concerns about another child. They conducted a video call with someone they believed was Mimi. So this is months after police now say that she was already dead. And Mark, that's one of the most disturbing aspects about this. You talk about Zoom calls, but how do you 100% know what you're seeing on there is legitimate or the child is who the caregiver's claiming to be? I mean, when you look at that timeline, what does that tell you?
It tells me there should have been more scrutiny on this family. Again, 2020 hindsight is easy, and I'm sure these child welfare professionals got into their job so they could help children, but they didn't. They failed here. We're never going to get a perfect result, but we need to get a better result. One thing we've not talked about, Ceci, though, is a separate part of this case is some judge gave the custody of this child to the mother and not to the father. The father was paying child support. In fact, I think the facts show that a child support payment came in the day after the child was dead. So the family is continuing to get money for a child, knowing the child is dead. I'd like to know more about that family case and was the father so unsuitable for placement and why the child was given to the mother. So there are several different sets of eyes on this case that could have done a much better job.
And look, the department points out that they hadn't received any new reports of abuse or neglect after 2022, and that the children were enrolled in school, they were seeing doctors. You know, it's hard to get a sense of what was actually going on, but I do wonder if that can give you an idea of how maybe something slipped through the cracks. Or again, maybe does it raise new questions about oversight?
Yeah, people need to make reports regularly. Nobody wants to live in a system where the government has a camera in our home looking for wrongdoing. That's right out of 1984. So government cannot be in private homes. Our Constitution doesn't permit that, and I wouldn't want that. Having said that, neighbors, friends, family members, teachers, other people who suspect things should not hesitate to report them, because the worst that's going to happen is a children's service worker shows up, checks out the house, everything's fine, no worries. More people with more focus on this case might have saved this child's life.
This agency keeps emphasizing, though, that there wasn't enough evidence to remove the children, quote, in accordance with state law. Is that a fair defense?
Well, what they're saying is based on what they knew. And what I'm saying is looking a little deeper might have gotten them more evidence, or perhaps connecting dots about what's happening in this child's life. A child this age would normally be interacting with several different people who would know that she's doing well. And so narrowing the focus of that child's life so she's only ever with that family, and they're withholding food and then zip tying her and then locking her up and then she's dead, suggests that there were dots that could have been connected.
Now, while I have you, Mark, I want to talk about another update in this case. It concerns Jonathan Nanita, so the man accused of helping cover up Mimi's death. He was back in court yesterday, made a brief appearance in New Britain on November 4th, facing even more charges that are tied to this child's death. Police say Nanita helped dispose of the plastic storage bin where Mimi's body was found. This is outside a vacant home on Clark Street in New Britain last month. And when Nanita was first arrested back on October 13th, he was charged with murder with special circumstances, conspiracy to commit murder, risk of injury to a child, cruelty to a child. And then just days later, investigators added 2 new charges, tampering with physical evidence and illegal disposal of a dead body. So those are the charges that he faced in court. His bond on the original counts remains $5 million. And then the judge yesterday set an additional $750,000 bond for the new charges. Mark, from a prosecutorial point of view, what does it tell you when investigators add counts like this? You know, it's strengthening the case, I guess, in a way. It's adding more for them to work with. I also wonder, something, you know, interesting that you mentioned before, if you're adding more counts, does it give them more leverage to drop others and work out some sort of deal?
That's the 2 primary reasons why prosecutors add charges. Number one, you give jurors options. Some jurors might not think that he was responsible for the murder, but he's responsible for covering it up. So you give them a way that they can convict him on other charges. The other one is, if a jury is really angry about this case, and we could see a jury being really angry about this case, they could find guilt on all of the charges, and a judge could max and stack the defendant. Every defense lawyer worries about that. That's what creates an environment where they could negotiate some charges dismissed, plead guilty to others. That's how most criminal cases resolve, for better or worse. Most criminal cases resolve by way of a negotiated plea agreement, which guarantees certainty to both sides of an outcome.
But how can a jury believe him, right? You know, if they're thinking he was a participant in this, and now he's testifying. I mean, we don't know if he is, but you know, if he allegedly was a part of this, pleads guilty, let's say, you know, works with prosecutors to testify against the others, how does a jury believe him? You know, you were involved in this, right? It's like, doesn't that raise serious credibility issues?
That's the most likely scenario, is that they're mad about him. They don't believe that he is less responsible, and they want to find him guilty on all of them. But remember, jurors are funny. When we get together at prosecutors' conferences, we talk about how frustrating jurors can be. All you need is one person in that jury box who goes, you know what, this is the government's fault. If the government had done their job, this would have never happened. I'm going to vote to acquit. Now we have a hung jury, and now we go back to square one. So the prosecution would prefer certainty, which is, can we definitely get these people into long prison sentences? And the defense would prefer some sort of confidence knowing that they're going to be able to get a shorter prison sentence, maybe 20 years instead of life.
And let me just be clear as we wrap things up. You have all three who are behind bars, okay? Carla Garcia, Nanita, they are charged with murder with special circumstances, conspiracy to commit murder, risk of injury to a minor, unlawful restraint, intentional cruelty to a child, tampering with evidence. I mentioned Nanita is now charged also with violation of regulations regarding the disposition of a dead body. So he and Garcia, each being held on this $5 million bond. And then the sister, Garcia's sister, the aunt here, right, Jacqueline Garcia, faces charges including cruelty to persons, unlawful restraint, reckless endangerment, multiple counts of risk of injury to a child. She remains held on a $1 million bond. All three are due back in New Britain Superior Court on November 14th. Real quick, before we wrap things up, Mark, number of defendants here. Is that strange to you, that all three adults are accused of participating in this?
It's what makes this case even more horrific. I think the aunt was on parole from having abused her child, and so she's released to this house and now is either responsible for or co-responsible for the death of this child. The more we think about this, Jesse, the more upsetting it gets, because a murder that happens in a 5 minutes set of time, maybe heat of passion, that's one kind of evil. But this played out over days and weeks while this child slowly starved down to 27 pounds and then died. All three of those adults were involved in some way, and that's what makes this case so heinous.
Mark Weaver, thank you so much. Appreciate you taking the time.
A sad case, but always good to be back with you, Jesse.
And that's all we have for you right now here on Sidebar, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. And as always, please subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you should get your podcasts. You can follow me on X or Instagram. I'm Jesse Weber. I'll speak to you next time.